Okay, during this session, session 10, we are going to be looking at how to bring in text and split it into columns, how to span text across columns, and also how to efficiently open up the spaces between paragraphs using the feature space before and space after. During this explanation, I will also show you how to see what's going on behind the scenes in InDesign, looking at hard returns and soft returns, invisible characters. Okay, hopefully you've already watched session 9 and you're confident with creating text boxes, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a text box. Now, if you haven't got a Word file you can import, then you can go up to type and fill with placeholder text. Always useful if you're creating a design for a client and you don't want the client to start to engage with the content of the text because you don't have an actual piece of text to put in there at this stage. But I actually have got some text, so I'm going to go up to File and Place, just like I would have done to bring in an image, and I am going to bring some copy into place. There we go. Okay, now at this stage I want to introduce you to some more guides, and we're going to go up to Layout and Margins, and at this point we can add in some guides that sit in the back of your page that don't print, but they are useful for you to line things up with. Okay, so the gutter is the space in between the columns, and that is something that you can adjust as well. And I'm going to say OK to that, and then I'm going to show you how to preview your page. I'm going to go to the bottom of the toolbox and you'll see how these guides don't actually print. Now don't forget W will also give you a preview of printing and non-printing elements. Okay, now what hasn't happened is the text hasn't moved to go into 3 columns, and that's because you have to do a second thing down at the very bottom here on your properties palette and increase the columns. There we go. That has now split that into 3 columns. Okay, I'm going to mark this over and I'm going to change the font a little bit, and let's see what we've got here. There we go. And I'm going to make it slightly smaller. Excellent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to force a paragraph here and make this bold, because this is going to be my introductory paragraph. There we go. It's going to give the person viewing my work a clear signpost of where to start reading my article. Okay, once I've done this, what I'd really like to happen is for this to run across this whole 2 paragraphs. So let me introduce you to going up to Type, to the Paragraph window. Now normally I'd expect to find the window over here, but this time we're going to come into Type and find the Paragraph window here. There we go, and this has got lots more options for us to work with in InDesign. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark over that text, and I'm going to come to the sub-menu and I'm going to go down to Span Columns. Now this will save you making a new text box, because within the one text box you can start to span your text across 2 or 3 or however many columns you might have. So let's just do that across those 2 columns for now. There's also an option to split columns, which I'll leave you to explore. That's quite useful if you've got some bullet pointed lists and you want to save space, because then you can further subdivide a column. Okay, so we'll stick with that for now. So that was spanning columns and splitting columns. So I'm just going to make my text box a little bit more shallow. So the next thing that I'd like to happen is the spaces after the paragraphs to open up a little bit. Now you could simply click a hard return. The disadvantage of that is that you end up with a complete line space that you have no control over. What I'm about to show you is a much neater trick where you can increase the space by fractions of a millimetre. Now, I'm just going to show you that up in the type menu, there's something called hidden characters. Now, sometimes you might find that quite useful to turn on because this actually shows you what is happening behind the scenes. At the end of every paragraph, you'll see there's a hard return. Looks a bit like a back to front P. And in a tiny little speck which represents a letter space. The only other one we haven't seen here is a tab, which will look like the chevron just over here, or a soft return, which you can achieve with shift and return, and that looks like a little corner as that icon shows there. Okay, so the reason why I'm showing you this is because when you mark over the text and you start to use this space after option, which is located here and also replicated over here, as I start to click on that, InDesign uses these hard returns as little signals to know where the paragraphs actually fall. And you can see how I can increase this by a fraction of a millimetre. Okay, the last thing that I want to show you is that when you put a subheading in, there we go, let's just centre that. Now I'm going to use that keyboard shortcut that we talked about in earlier sessions, making sure I am not actually typing at the time, but if I just hit W on the keypad, that will hide all of the hidden characters and the guides to see what we actually have. Now, the issue at the moment is the subheading is floating. It doesn't look like text. What I'm going to do now is introduce you to the last feature of this session, which is space before. And if you click that, it will allow you to just ease the space visually before and after the subheading so that it naturally looks like it belongs to this paragraph which it is describing. Okay, so what we've learned in this session is how to bring in text, how to set up margins and columns which are non-printing, how to split up blocks of text, how to span text across. We found out that there's something called invisibles which happen behind the scene, so you can actually get a good handle on what InDesign is doing, almost like at a programming level. And we have learnt how to ease in space before and after paragraphs using space before and space after. That's the end of session 10, and I look forward to seeing you in session 11. And don't forget there's a worksheet that accompanies this session.